is Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. So, one of my last videos, it was a 420 video. It was a tribute to 420. Look, I enjoyed making that video. And there were some people who said, it was like, dude, you should do that again. You should do that again. So I may make this like a monthly series or something. I actually enjoy it. It allows me to departure from politics. So yeah, blaze one if you got one. I'll go with that one. I'll go with that. So let's start here. Before we go anywhere else, this conversation to some degree is going to be about reality or just weirdnesses, or oddities of potential realities. Now I'm saying potential because understand, we have no clue what this is. We're soaking in something. It infuses everything, everywhere we go, everything, talking, thinking, eating, smelling, breathing, our reality. We have no clue what this is. None. Now, we can find properties of the reality, meaning we can have physicists to look at physical matter reality and do experiments, hypothesis, investigation, to try to understand aspects of the reality itself, meaning I might not necessarily know what the reality is, but I can see properties of that particular reality. But that's different than understanding the point and understanding the reality itself as a whole. Take that a step further. So if you want to say that there's no way to necessarily understand what this is, how can you definitively say what it's not? For that matter, how can you definitively say what you yourself are? You have no clue that anyone else exists other than yourself. You have no proof at all. Ultimately, all these other people can be figments of your imagination. And to a more interesting degree, all of those things are taking place purely inside your head. The reason I said they're taking place purely inside your head, we have no idea what the outside world looks like. Ultimately, we have no idea even if there is an outside world, if that makes sense. So, yes, we're interacting in a particular way. But that interaction is done purely through electrical impulses, signals. They're reaching our brain. They're giving us an experience of reality, but those things are taking place in our brains. Maybe not necessarily out there. We don't even know what out there is to try to say whether something's taking place out there in the first place. You go to sleep at night. You have a dream. In that dream, you're talking to your wife, your girlfriend, your spouse, whatever. You go outside, you take the trash out, you look up at the stars, you wish on the moon that you could take a vacation or something because you are sick of whatever you're doing. You go back in the house, you lay down. Burglar comes in, almost murders you. You get up, scot-free. You're not injured. Cops come. Now you've had this immensely elaborate dream, extremely elaborate. You thought your life was at stake. Ultimately, you wished on the moon that you could have a different life and a different way of being. And you wake up back into this particular reality. Now the oddity is, you're supposed to be the totality of that dream space, meaning all of that reality. It's just you. And even though that entire reality is just you, you're still looking from the perspective of somebody with two eyes. Why are you looking through the perspective of two eyes if you are the totality of that reality? What I'm getting at is you were able to create a moon. You created a space for your freedom of movement. You created situations to which you found yourself in. You created danger to, again, which you found yourself in. All the while none the wiser that you yourself was a person who was creating those things. And you wake up. And you go about your life. And no association is made between the space, that dimension, that experience that you just had. Because understand, all experiences are real. Your brain does not make a distinction between this and between that dream state. Ultimately, in that particular dream state, you lived an experience. If you remembered that experience, you would gain qualities and information from that experience in the same way you gain experiences through this real world. And I'm saying real, full well, under this understanding that I have no idea what that means. No idea what that means. So the question becomes, how do you know? This is what you think it is. Meaning, yes, physical matter reality. I hit on a chair. I can sit. I can push things around. I can move things. But the other space that you just left, also, the only distinction between those two things is continuity. Meaning you can have multiple dream experiences but you always come back to this particular one. So this one seems to be the real one. That's, again, more of a relative perception thing. Your perception is floating between all of these different dream spaces. Okay, fair enough. If the only thing you had was dream spaces, then all of those things will be equal with one another. Every so often, you periodically come back into physical matter reality, in which case, again, you're back in a conceptual bubble of sorts, or perceptual bubble. At which point, you leave again and end up in one of the other ones. Now, the only reason you give physical matter reality more credence is because you keep coming back to it. But just because you keep coming back to it doesn't necessarily mean that it's fundamentally different than the reality that you yourself are leaving at night or when you doze off. There's no way you can nail that down, per se. I mean, granted, for us, we look at it as, well, this reality has continuity to it. Because this reality has continuity to it, it has to be the correct one. It has to be the only one. That other one is just figments of my imagination. Maybe. Maybe not. Maybe not. When I was younger, I used to get into these, I used to have lucid dream states, like where you were wide awake, fully conscious, fully aware, and yet you full well understand that your body is somewhere else, and yet you're functioning in a completely different dimension of sorts. Now, this is slightly weird. It takes a little bit getting used to, because you automatically, at that moment, you're confronted with this question of, well, wait a minute, then which one is real? I'm perfectly aware in this particular situation. Which one is real? Where my body is there, or where I'm standing right now, to which I am standing. I am moving around. This is reality that I'm functioning in. Which one is real? You can take this further than lucid dreaming. Out-of-body experiences. Now, when I think it was a couple of years ago, I told you before, I like to investigate this stuff. I'm not one of those people who just kind of shut myself off and be like, yeah, that can't happen, that doesn't exist. Because I'm stuck with a particular honesty. I don't know what reality is, so how can I completely disregard these other aspects? Any disregarding is somewhat of a religious experience. I want to investigate. I want to know. If it's proven wrong, fair enough. If it's proven right, that is fucking awesome, and it gives me a little bit more information about the reality to which I persist. And look, so this runs the gambit for me. But in this particular case, I got enamored with this idea of OBEs, out-of-body experiences. And I wanted to either demonstrate for myself that it was doable. And granted, not being able to do it doesn't necessarily indicate that it's not doable. But the only chance you have of trying to do it is to actually do it. And with my history of lucid dreaming, it made me that much more adamant to try it. Scared the shit out of me. If I'm being honest, scared the shit out of me. Because the sensations are so weird, and the sensations are so strange, that it takes some getting used to. Now, the very first sensation I realized, and look, I was wide awake, so understand, this is not me falling asleep and dozing into dreamland. The practice was to do it from a conscious state, meaning get into a meditative state, remain conscious, and slip out of your body, of your physical body at that point. Now, this would have amazing implications, because it goes back to this thing of mystics saying, well, yeah, this is just one aspect of reality. Physical matter reality is one aspect of reality. It's not the bee's knees. There are other planes of existence. Now, if you need a different vehicle for those other planes of existence, meaning, yeah, you have access to those things, but the vehicle that you use to some degree is dependent upon the reality to which you find yourself. Now, in that particular case, I was able to put it this way. I got to the point where, as I'm laying down, I'm feeling myself, I'm feeling weird. And it feels like I'm plugged into an electrical outlet. Literally. It feels like my heart was beating 200-300 beats per second. It felt like it was going to beat out of my chest. My heart wasn't beating any faster at all. What I was perceiving was an energetic body. It's almost like a copy of sorts. But in this particular case, you're overtly aware of it. It's not something you pay attention to in normal waking consciousness. In this particular case, you're very, very aware of it. And it's a little startling. It feels like you've been plugged into an electrical outlet. Again, it feels like my heart is beating out my chest. And then you start hearing It's like somebody puts a vacuum cleaner to both of your ears. So even though the house is completely silent, even though your heart is not racing, from your perspective at that particular point, your heart is beating through your chest, and you're in the middle of a hurricane. It's extraordinarily loud. It's hard to get that part across. And even to the point of almost hearing like a voice during that particular sound. It's weird. It's creepy. Now, in the process of, once you get past that, though, you reach this place, at least I did, of quietness. And mind you, it took me a while to get to that place because I would continuously punk out in that process. It was only me chastising myself in one of the other times of, dude, don't be a pussy. Keep going. Don't be a pussy. I ended up in the situation of laying on the bed. The sounds pretty much died off. The energetic thing died off. My eyes are closed. I'm still in bed, but I'm staring at the ceiling, even though my eyes are closed. Now, I'm feeling slightly odd, but I'm kind of looking up like, wait a minute. I'm staring at the ceiling and see the ceiling. I can clearly see the room to which I'm in, even though my eyes are closed and this body, for the most part, is asleep. And it wasn't asleep. I was still conscious, but it was somewhat disassociated from the body itself. I was perceiving the environment without using the physical apparatus. I stayed in that state for all of 5 seconds because I started to freak myself out. And the one thing I do know is in that particular state, your thoughts are reality. The things that you're thinking of, if I'm thinking of a goblin, I don't necessarily want to see that goblin. And I realized that as I felt myself kind of, that fear level ticking up a little bit, it was like I was trying to wall off everything else in my head, keeping this thing of, be very specific to your focus of staying in this particular state. Ignore everything else. But the virtue of you saying ignore everything else means you're not ignoring everything else. So, I didn't stay in the state long. My goal was to prove that the state existed, which, to me, I did. Now, there's no way to communicate that to anybody else unless that person themselves have gone through that particular experience. And anybody else would say, yeah, you're just dreaming. No, that doesn't exist. But they would try to explain it away. Those are religious beliefs. Ultimately, the argument, or the only honest conversation is, I have no idea what that is. That is fucking awesome, but I have no idea what that is. Is that some fundamental level of reality? Maybe. Is it some kind of altered dream state? Maybe. I have ideas, but ultimately the only honest answer that I can give is, that's fucking amazing, but I have no clue what it is. But let's think of it from another perspective. The experiences there are also real. Those experiences are also real. And if you're functioning in that particular environment, and you're interacting with other beings of sorts, or for that matter, other landscapes, other planes, those experiences are real. Just as real as our experiences here. You end up with this idea that reality is not physical matter reality, that it runs the gambit of sorts, that this is not just one plane of existence, but there are multi-planes of existence. And once you get into this idea of like out-of-body research that these guys are doing, they're getting across conceptual environments that are somewhat similar, but at the same token somewhat different than our current physical matter reality. And again, what this is, I would make the case, at least in this particular talk, is irrelevant. The conversation I'm having is, what does it mean for your own current reality if there are other realities? What does it mean? You're not the bee's knees, you're one of many. What does that mean? What does that mean? What does that say about reality as a whole at that point? What does it say about your place as a human being? Not just in the greater sphere of our particular universe, our particular country, our particular world, our particular universe, but also in the grand scheme of a full-on variance of reality itself. I think reality is far stranger than I think we give it credit for. And I think as history goes on, as the future kind of goes on, we find that the ideas and the theories that many of these physicists, scientists, that they had, some of the planks fall away as they get a little bit more information and they realize this reality is somewhat fucking weird. It's weird. Whether you're talking about the double slit experiment, where, this particle wave duality, something that's behaving as a wave and a particle at the exact same time, depending upon the consciousness of the person who's observing the item. Well, that's pretty fucking weird. At the very least, it gives this hint of, yeah, maybe we're not necessarily hitting the answer. And mind you, they're not looking for that particular answer. The answer they're looking for are properties of that particular environment. Because ultimately, they understand that they don't necessarily understand the whole, in the sense of reality. You can even make the argument of being impossible to understand that from our relative perspective. What they try to do is, I need to understand the physical world because we live in this particular physical world. The larger question of, is there something beyond this physical world, is not so much on their radar. Even though, to me, that question is probably one of the most interesting of all of the other questions. So, alright guys, if you enjoy the content, feel free to write, feel free to share, subscribe, and you can always support the work through Patreon.